the Muslim community really welcomes you, man.
Yeah, it's been pretty divided. I've had a whole bunch of support.
Yes.
Obviously, there's been some people who are not quite pleased about the idea. I think when you have a passionate subject and people that are truly engulfed in an idea, you're going to have some degree of polarization.
I think that maybe when you look in the online space, that might be your impression. But in reality, on the ground, I mean, that's definitely not the case. I would say the vast majority of people, 80, 90%, are completely happy about this. And it's just that the minority have a very loud voice.
Well, that's exactly it. That's the whole problem with the internet as a whole, not just Islam, but the internet as a whole is about vocal minorities that look much larger than they are, right?
Yeah.
And I agree with you, and I'd like to hear that. But the reason I know what you're saying is true is because it's the same even in my case in other subjects. Online, I have all this some kind of hate or people trying to disagree with me, but when I walk through life, I have 30,000 interactions with people, and not a single one's ever been negative, ever. So it is crazy how the vocal minority is amplified on social media.
The main thing to note, though, is that Islam, it completely wipes away your sins. I mean, most of the companions of the Prophet had done many things which are heinous and polytheism. I mean, for us as Muslims, polytheism is the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
And so there is a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ where he states that Islam, it completely yuhdimu ma qabla. It destroys everything before. I mean, it wipes away everything before it. In other words, your slate is absolutely clean. Now, if there are some people who are actually coming and giving you a bit of a hard time, that's actually their problem.
Yeah.
Because in reality, honestly, bro, this is completely un-Islamic. I mean, so that's the first thing. There's actually a verse in the Quran, interestingly enough as well, which says that if you become a Muslim, إِلَّا مَنْ آمَنَ تَابَ وَآمَنَ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا, whoever repents and believes and does good works, then God will يُبَدِّلُ اللَّهُ سَيِّئَاتِهِمْ حَسَنَاتٍ. That God will change their bad deeds into good deeds. So how does that make you feel?
Well, yeah, that's obviously fantastic to hear and good to know. And it's interesting because I've spent very little time paying attention to the negative comments because I don't in general. But on this particular subject, a few people were forwarding me like the profiles of somebody or of the people who were unhappy with my conversion, and they weren't living very Islamic lives themselves. So it's kind of funny to look at, you know.
Exactly, bro. I wanted to start with something which I think the whole world wants to hear about, which, to be honest with you, affects our sector as people who want to speak about Islam, call people to Islam, defend Islam, have an Islamic voice or a voice for the Muslim people, which is your ban. Yeah. Because quite frankly, I found it was a vicious attack, a brutal attack on you. It's a case study example now. They've put you in the history books. The question is, what grounds have all of these different social media organizations banned you?
They never gave me grounds. They never sent me an official email. They never gave me an official reason. They just delete your profile and you just can't log in anymore. The reason they don't give you an official reason, I think, at the end is because they're scared in a court of law that they're going to be stuck to one reason, right? So if I decide to take them to court, they want to be able to flip-flop and make up reasons as they go. They want to change their terms of service and terms and conditions proactively. They want to change it afterwards. Me, I don't know who's this.
Oh, okay, sorry, yeah.
But so they never gave me an official reason for banning me. So I don't truly understand and truly know. I mean, I understand the reason they've come up with, and I know that reason is false. I have my own theories on why they banned me, but them themselves have never told me why. They just keep your profile.
For example, YouTube. Most producers know that YouTube have community guidelines, right? And they have copyright strikes. So, for example, if one breaks the rules, if you like, of engagement, then they're given a strike, and then a second strike, and a third. You're telling me that this process was not taken with you?
Oh, absolutely not. No, I had no strikes. When I first got banned, the initial ban was on Meta. It was on Facebook and Instagram. In perfect synchronization was a large press release by the media, which gave this reason to justify banning me, which was of course false. And I knew the ban was coming. We can talk about that in a second. But when it first hit, I then, by coincidence, got one strike on my YouTube channel.
Which was a community strike?
It was some strike for some old video about me talking about masks, saying that masks were ridiculous, a COVID-19 strike.
Yeah.
On a very old video. They gave me a strike, which obviously prevents you from posting for 7 days.
Yeah.
So I filmed a reply to my initial ban, and then after 5 days, I think, as the strike was coming to an end, just before I could post, they deleted the whole channel without explanation, without an email, nothing, just deleted all of it, wiped it off. And the channel wasn't even in my name. That's just what's funny about this. Yes, I was on the channel, but the channel was in the name of the producer. So it wasn't even officially my channel. My brother's channel got wiped. Like, they just attack and just delete everything. And yeah, these community guidelines are so ridiculously vague that they don't even mean anything. Trying to read them is like reading garbage. It doesn't make any sense.
I've been following the arguments online about this kind of thing. And obviously, one of the key tenets, if you like, of Western civilization is freedom of expression and speech.
Yeah.
And the main counter-argument is that, no, but YouTube and all these other companies, they're private companies. But what I would respond to that is that, well, these are private companies, but in many ways, they have a higher ability to uphold freedom of speech and expression than even the governments do.
Yeah.
So this is actually it's like an Orwellian state. Like, we're looking at something which the thought police. Isn't this concerning that you have these elites, whoever they may be, who can take these arbitrary decisions and delete somebody from YouTube? Like
yeah, it's worse than concerning. This is why I talk about the Matrix all the time in my videos, and I try and explain that we are living in a false version of reality. We're living in a computer-generated simulation because the computers, which is the social media companies, are generating a version of reality which simply isn't true. By deleting one entire side of the argument, by purporting facts, which happen to be false, by deleting information which happens to be true, by making sure the algorithms choose what information you see and what you don't see, they're literally affecting the world people live in. And there's people who are walking through the world today with a mindset and a view on life which is the result of false information, the result of a construction by these social media companies. So we're living inside of a matrix. We're living inside of a very false version of reality.
And that's in many ways, it can be more pernicious than a classic totalitarian state, because at least with a totalitarian state, everyone's being honest about the level of domination. With this kind of thing, it's like, it gives you the illusion of freedom, do what you want, but then we'll control the narratives in other ways.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think in most totalitarian states, like, I don't think freedom of speech exists anywhere on the planet, but I do think inside of some states, you know what you can talk about and you know what you can't talk about, and it's pretty clear, right? If I were to go to Russia, for example, I would know what I could say and what I couldn't say without getting in trouble, right? But in the Western world, we pretend that's not the case. And I think that often they'll let you discuss many different subjects until you get to a certain point of influence, and that's when they get afraid of you. It's not just what you say, it's how powerful your voice is. I think the biggest problem with me is not the things I was saying, it's the fact that I became so monumentally popular. And if you're monumentally popular and you have a huge proportion of the youth and a large contingent of the population which are interested in your words, and you haven't sold your soul to the agenda, then they see, okay, he's a large counteraction to our methods and what we're trying to do here, so he has to go. So I think also you can be the victim of your own success.
So let me ask you this final question on this point, which is, you call it the Matrix, we can call it the liberal world order. Because the LWO or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's certainly a method of control. They've got their own ideologies. You know, liberalism, for example, second wave feminism, still, they're shoving it in our faces. And obviously you've said things which are totally antithetical to that, which in many ways could be argued to be the reason why they banned you, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm against this whole idea of liberalism and tolerance as a whole, because one, it's hypocritical because these people are not liberal and tolerant. The people who are talking about liberalism and tolerance, they want us all to look different but think the same. If you think differently, then you're instantly a bad guy, right? They love the idea of someone looking different so they can pretend they're diverse and tolerant, but they want you to say the same things and believe the same things. As soon as you step outside of their pre-approved script, instantly they're no longer tolerant and they're no longer interested in diversity of thought. So the first thing, it's very hypocritical. And secondly, I've learned in life that the easiest way to get people to accept bad things is to do it with a Trojan horse. You find some way to disguise it. Even the Senate does this. Even governments do this. They'll say, the green bill, this is to save the environment. And then somewhere on page 84 will be this little code about giving them all a pay rise. And you don't want to look at the bad guy who says no to saving the environment, and they just sneak it in, right? It's very difficult. If you vote against saving the environment, you're terrible. And the media talks about how you didn't want to save the environment, and you have to sit there and try and explain on page 84, the MPs are trying to get an extra 45% money, and you're already on a back foot. And this is how they do it. They do everything with Trojan horses, and it doesn't matter what you want to name. Even agendas that are pure of heart, simple things, they end up being weaponized, and Trojan, like you just said, second wave feminism and liberalism, all this crazy stuff. But the number one most dangerous one is this idea of tolerance. To sit and talk about being tolerant sounds like such a good thing that it's very difficult for someone to sit and say, no, I am an intolerant person. Now you look bad. But when they say tolerance and push tolerance to the point where absolute degeneracy must be accepted,
That's the point, yeah.
then you're a better person to not be tolerant. You can't be tolerant of degeneracy. You can't be tolerant of your own children seeing things they shouldn't see. You can be tolerant of the destruction of society. If they're going to sit here and say that, no, tolerance is the best thing ever, and then Trojan horse it and destroy the way humans interact, then I don't think tolerance is a good thing.
Well.